This is going to blow your mind. Oh, and watch until the end, because I'm going to be dropping a little bombshell. Hey guys, welcome back to another Mastermind Content Archetypes Explained series, and in this video we're going to have a look at the third part of the Trickster. And if you saw parts 1 and 2, you will know that the Trickster plays a key role in bringing the conscious personality to life. It is this vibrant, fun-loving and infectious energy that makes you a pleasure to be around. But there is a deeper meaning to this archetype, which I'm going to illustrate in this video with, wait for it, the esoteric symbolism in Greek mythology. Now before you tune out and turn off, hear me out. Mythology provides us with stories and illustrations in ways that can amplify our understanding of the psyche and human nature. It can help you understand yourself and others on a deeper level. So in this video, I just want to show you a few things about how you can use the esoteric symbolism in mythology as a self-development tool. And if you've not watched the Mastermind Content channel before, my name is Richard Oldale and I help people to master the contents of your mind. Master mind content, the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. Now, one of the ways I do this is by using archetypes, an archetypes model which illustrates patterns of human nature. And there are 12 archetypes that encompass the whole of human nature, all the qualities that are accessible to mankind as a species. And the idea of self-development is to integrate these qualities within the personality that enable you to effectively manage your environment. However, because human nature consists of thousands of qualities, it's practically impossible to remember all of them. So what I have done with this archetypes model is to assign a male god and a Greek goddess to each of the archetypes. And I've used Greek mythology to do this because the stories in the Greek gods are more well known than probably other myths around the world. And if you're not already aware of what an archetype is, this is how Carljung describes it. Not only are the archetypes apparently impressions of ever repeated typical experiences, but at the same time they behave empirically like agents that tend towards the repetition of these same experiences. For when an archetype appears in a dream, in a fantasy, or in life, it always brings with it a certain influence or power by virtue of which it either exercises a numinous or fascinating effect or impels us to take action. In other words, the archetypes are energies, and energies is information which is either in the personal unconscious, as Jung called it, which we know today more as a subconscious program, but it's actually a memory. These memories prompt us to adopt habitual patterns of thoughts, actions and emotions. Another way the archetype comes to us is through inspiration, or it takes possession of the ego and makes us do things that the ego may be afraid to do or may not know how to do. And as I mentioned in part 1, the Trickster prompts you to take actions that you think you can do but you actually can't. Now the purpose, the role that it adopts in these moments is to deflate an overinflated ego. So when you are egotistical, when the ego is inflated, you believe that you can actually do things that you can't do. You're blind, you're deluded towards your own limitations. So the role of the trickster is to take over the possession of the ego, make you do something foolish so that you deflate that part, that egotistical part of your personality. And this is what I'm going to illustrate in this video using Greek mythology, starting with the god Hermes, which is identified by Carl Jung as the trickster due to his cunning and deceptive nature. So Hermes is shown to be intelligent and deceiving from the day that he is born, traits that are associated with the trickster archetype. Now, whilst his mother's back is turned, Hermes sneaks out of the cave and steals cattle from his half-brother Apollo and hides them in a stable. And when Apollo, the conscious mind, discovers this misdeed, Hermes denies it. Now, we're also prone to do this. When an unconscious energy, an archetype, takes possession of the conscious mind and forces us into a behaviour that we later regret, we would rather deny that we did it than own up to it. We're afraid to take accountability. But the trickster is designed to make you take accountability. And in the myth, Apollo drags Hermes to Olympus to speak with his father about the matter. And Zeus is so charmed by Hermes' story that he lets him off. As Zeus is the self archetype, and sometimes we have to have self-compassion and admit to our mistakes. Admit that, well, maybe I wasn't quite ready to be a success at this thing that I want to achieve. You set yourself an intention, but you have to have the qualities, the right character traits, the right skills, the right temperament, attitudes, etc., to be able to cope with that goal that you've set for yourself, to manifest your intention. But we are going to make mistakes along the way, and sometimes we need to have self-compassion and admit that we're not quite ready for that yet. We need to train the ego. So you see what I mean? The ego becomes inflated because it believes that it can do something that it's not yet trained to do. So the trickster is also known as the magician because it casts these illusions or delusions, the lies that we tell to ourselves. It casts these onto the conscious mind to make us believe something that is false, which we believe to be true. Now, at the extreme level of the spectrum, this would constitute as psychosis, delirium, insanity, hallucinations and paranoia, but more commonly it constitutes delusions of grandeur, whereby you think you can do something that you can't, or you make cruel jokes because you're cut off from your emotions and don't recognise how you are hurting other people even though you think you're being funny. You being humorous to you is an illusion that you have created in your mind because you're wanting attention from other people. So the trickster is a master of deception, and just like a magician or a wizard or a conjurer, which are other names for this archetype, in popular culture we see that magicians and wizards are usually depicted wearing hooded cloaks, right? So this relates to the aspect of your personality that protects the ego's emotional insecurity through deception. The lifted hood, on the other hand, invites light to hit your head, which is symbolic of the sun, the light coming in, whereby you're able to see the illuminated mind, the enlightened mind, information that you can see where you have done something wrong, where you have made a mistake, where you have been egotistical, where the ego is inflated. So let me give you an example. How often do you talk yourself out of doing something different that would serve an intention or goal for yourself if you went through with it? How many times have you denied yourself the opportunity to make your life better somehow, but didn't take that opportunity? Or maybe you're trying to give up a habit, but you fall off the proverbial wagon because your ego thinks that you need whatever your habit is to get through the day. You're basically drawn to your habit through emotions. Your mind is saying one thing, no, we shouldn't do this, I want to give up. But your emotion is pulling you towards whatever substance or behaviour makes you feel emotionally comforted, or it gives you pleasure. So your emotions are stored as memories in the central nervous system because it provides comfort and pleasure because it served as a coping mechanism in the past. Therefore, it prompts the same habitual behaviours. because you think you need whatever comfort this substance offers you. Now, emotions compel you to crave for addictions. Emotions are stored in neurotransmitters, which are called chemical messengers. Hermes is the messenger of the gods, and his symbol is the caduceus, which looks like this. A symbol that represents the central nervous system. You see the shaft is the spine, the wings are the two hemispheres of the brain, and the intertwined serpent are the energies, the information that is communicated throughout the central nervous system. Incidentally, the caduceus shares the same symbolic meaning as the rod of Asclepius, which features a single serpent entwined around a shaft, but essentially the meaning is the same, the shaft being the spine and the serpent is the energy. All energy carries information. So the central nervous system is responsible for decoding, storing and retrieving information that determines how you behave. It determines who you are as an individual and how we respond to our environment. So check this out. The rod of Asclepius is a universal symbol used by countless medical professions all over the world. It is a symbol of health. The caduceus is therefore a symbol of health. So the trickster's function of deflating ego to help you become more self-aware is a symbol of health, and this is what Jung said. We become healthier, the mind, our mental health becomes improved when the ego is deflated and there's an equilibrium between these two opposing energies, the conflicting parts of our personality, one that we use too much and the other one that is being ignored but what is wanting to be given expression. The one that we use too much is what Jung called being one-sided, which means that we're then unbalanced, you see. So we have to become self-aware of the archetype or the energy, the part of our personality that we're not using enough, that we're not given expression, and bring the two into unison to find behaviours that serve both archetypal energies. Now, the Jungian Marie-Louise von Franz notes that knowledge is either poisonous or healing. It is one or the other, and that is why some myths say that knowledge brings about the corruption of the world, and others that knowledge is healing. And then we have the biblical idea which says that it is first corruption, but later turns, thanks to God, into healing. So can you see how this quote encapsulates the trickster archetype? Serpents are known to be poisonous and thus toxic. Environments can also be toxic and therefore poisonous to the conscious personality. A lack of available information stored in your memory banks makes you poisonous to others, but also makes the environment poisonous to you because of how you respond to the environment. Somebody could make an innocuous comment that you take as a personal insult because you feel as though you're being criticised, for example. And the serpent is also associated with healing because it can bring about self-awareness, in my opinion. Now, the official reason for the serpent around the shaft being used for by the medical profession is because researchers discovered that human health used to be maintained and modified by administrating snake venom and then developing antidotes which were, well, the snake venom was injected into the priestesses and initiates of sacred sites or settlements, and then they would be used to then their blood would be used to create an antidote. But it's also said that shamans use snake venom to induce hallucinations, and in an hallucinogenic state you're in an altered state of consciousness whereby you can see through the illusion of the external world, but you also break through the limited vision of the ego and see yourself more clearly. So I imagine this experience will be similar to the hallucinogenic medicines that we still use today, especially in South America, such as San Pedro and ayahuasca, which have been shown to be effective tools for attaining self-realization. And as I mentioned before, this self-realization is a healing process. It creates the imbalance of a one-sided nature, and that's what the two snakes intertwining equally up the spine or the shaft is revealing, that each side of our personality, each energies, has to be balanced to operate in or to function in harmony. So we've shown that Hermes is the messenger of the gods, and that neurotransmitters that store memory are the messengers within the human psychobiological system. Well, it's also important to note that Hermes is the only god that transcends all three realms in mythology, from Olympus, which is the mind, Earth, which is the subconscious mind or central nervous system, and Hades, in which we would symbolize as the universe, if you like, or the morphogenetic field, the Akashic library, or God, whatever you want to call it. It's aspects of our conscious that are unconscious, that have not been expressed. So we go to God in heaven when we die. So God lives with the dead. Another way of describing dead is to say unlived, unexpressed. To be when we haven't expressed aspects of our personality, they are buried, they are dead. So as a psychopomp, Hermes leads the dead into Hades, but he also leads them out of Hades as well. Now memories can be, stored memories can be upgraded, they can be changed through epigenetics, through learning new experiences, or rather learning new skills and qualities through different experiences. And it's these aspects of our personality that are often repressed and need to be expressed, so that they create an upgraded version of ourselves, a bit like a software update. So then the subconscious mind, the central nervous system, is programmed with a new memory that enables us to cope with our environment more effectively, and our personality develops into the best version of ourselves. So can you see why Hermes and the Caduceus is associated with healing, developing the whole personality? And as I've mentioned before, whole and healthy come from the same root word. So remember, the central nervous system is responsible for decoding, storing and retrieving information that prompts thoughts, emotions and behaviours. So if your information is good, then you're likely to be more effective. If the information is bad, then you're likely to be less effective. And to compensate for this insecurity, your ego becomes overinflated, so the trickster then comes in to deflate the ego. So with that in mind, it's interesting to know that Jean Shinoda Bolen, another Jungian psychologist, writes, the man who grows beyond his identification with Hermes does so by knowing the assets and limitations of this archetype. He especially needs to be aware of the negative trickster potential of Hermes. He needs to act from awareness of the consequences to others and himself, and say no to this side of himself. Okay, let's move on to the second function of the trickster, which I will illustrate using the Greek goddess Hera, the Queen of Heaven. Now earlier I mentioned that the trickster helps us to develop the personality, which it does in two ways: using deception to help us see the light of truth, which you can do by deep contemplation, going down to Hades with Hermes, or being made a fool of so that you see the error of your ways. They're both related to Hermes. Now Hera can help you develop your personality. It can train the ego by confronting you with challenges that you have to overcome. And we see this in the myths of Heracles. Heracles actually meaning the making of Hera. Now, Heracles means the making of Hera because it's Hera that is responsible for bringing about the labours of Heracles, and then during his missions presenting him with additional challenges to overcome, which makes him a stronger and wiser person. Hera features heavily in the myths of Heracles, or Hercules as is better known. And first of all, Hera orders her daughter Alethea, the goddess of childbirth, to delay the birth of Heracles so that he is not able to claim the throne being the self-ego axis, the decision-making function of the conscious mind, where the king or ruler sits. On the day Heracles was due to be born, Zeus announced that a child of his would be born on that day and would rule all those around him. So this is when Hera intervenes and delays the birth of Heracles. Now, she meddles in the life of Heracles throughout his childhood, but Heracles always comes out on top. And it isn't until he is married with children that Hera finds some success. She basically sends Heracles mad. And in his madness, he becomes destructive by killing his wife and children. Now, this is symbolic of the trickster taking possession of the undeveloped ego. Those occasions when you have a moment of madness or you don't know what came over you, you acted out of character. Now, do you recognise these sayings? This is what happens when an archetype takes control over the ego and makes you do something that you would not ordinarily do. Now, when it is a trickster that's created the illusion that makes you believe that you can do this thing and you later regret, you can also recognize the truth. So Hera helps us to develop the ego, to train the ego by prompting us to face challenges that require new experiences. And these new experiences then give us new information that we can take and store as a memory. So the lesson to learn here is that the challenges that you face in life are designed to make you stronger. They're not barriers that are put there to defeat you. And this is another role of the trickster. It helps you to develop your conscious personality and become a better version of yourself by encountering new challenges. Now, we see a similar theme in the myth of Jason and the Argonauts. Jason helps an old man cross the river, but that old man turns out to be Hera in disguise. So to reward him, Hera arranges for Jason to embark on a mission to recover the Golden Fleece, a challenge that would enable him to claim his rightful place on the throne as the king of Thessaly. Now at the time, the throne was occupied by Peleus, a power-hungry tyrant. He was hated by his own sons and daughters so much that they killed him. Now Peleus is a son of Poseidon, the god of the sea and the rivers, which I explained in the philanthropist archetypes explained episode, is a symbol of the emotions, a ruling archetype which allows the emotions to overtake the conscious ego and overwhelm you. How many times have you felt overwhelmed by your environment because your emotions have taken control? They've taken power over you and influenced your decision making. Anyway, back to Jason. During his quest, the hero comes across Medea, a sorceress who uses her magic to save his life. Again, we're seeing the symbol of magic, sorcery and magicians casting spells and illusions. So Medea's story also shares similarities with Hera's throughout myth, which indicates they reflect the same function. So both Hera and Medea help their admirers and agree to marry them. Both women are punished by the husbands, and both women are cheated on and then seek revenge against the husband's children rather than their husband. So that means that in the myth of Jason and the Argonauts, Hera is the aspect of the trickster that challenges you to become king of your kingdom, your conscious reality. Media is the aspect of the trickster that casts illusions to deceive you by killing your children, by defeating you in the experiences that you create in life. So whilst you are striving to become a better person, to become the illuminated king, the benevolent king, during these phases of psychological development, you are the malevolent king, the Peleus. Or sometimes we see it as the prince or the hero that needs to develop their psyche, to develop their qualities and capacity to have command and authority over the kingdom being the central nervous system. Okay guys, I'm going to wrap this up there, but before I go, I just want to drop the bombshell that I promised at the beginning of the video. The modern word for media derives from media. Remember the sorceress I mentioned in Jason and the Argonauts. Media is a deceptive source, a sorcerer, a source of information. The trickster that plants illusions in your mind that you think are true, but then turn out to be false. And when you realise that, will make a fool out of you. Now, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. There's a good little trickster. I'm Richard Oldale, and this is Mastermind Content. I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.